The first sound was metal on glass, a sharp, deliberate tap at the front door like someone daring me to answer. I hadn't even brewed my first cup of coffee, and my hands already trembled in that familiar way Rex always notices. The German shepherd padded over, nudging my knee, head tilted, ready to do his job before I even knew I needed him. Outside, the Arizona dawn painted everything in pale gold and long shadows. My street was so still I could hear the creak of someone's sprinkler system a block over. But taped to my door, bright as a warning flare, was a notice printed in aggressive, bleeding red ink. Immediate removal of an unauthorized dog. Daily fines will apply. I stood barefoot in the doorway, staring at the words until they blurred, then refocused on Rex. He wasn't barking. He wasn't lunging. He was simply there, solid as a sandbag wall, wearing the vest that marked him as my lifeline. This was no misunderstanding. Someone wasn't just questioning my dog. They were questioning me. My name is Garrett Morrison, Purple Heart veteran, 34, 2 tours in Iraq, and a medical file thick enough to make airport security nervous. After my marriage detonated 18 months ago, collateral damage courtesy of a CrossFit trainer who mistook vows for dumbbells, I moved here to Meadowbrook Estates. Quiet streets, manicured lawns, a backyard where Rex and I could try to remember what peace feels like. Turns out, peace has a very short lease when your neighbor is Brenda Whitmore. She drives a white BMW with vanity plates that read HOA 1, as if the universe wanted to warn us in advance. 58, realtor, posture like a ruler pressed against her spine. When she crosses her arms, it's not a gesture, it's a verdict. She has this smile, thin, cold, that says, "I'm about to ruin your day and enjoy it." Most neighbors wave. She takes inventory. The first time she came knocking, it was early evening. Her perfume hit me before her words did, sharp enough to sting my eyes. "Your dog is disturbing the peace," she said, each syllable clipped like a court summons. "Service animal," I explained, calm as I could manage. "Years of VA counseling teach you how to educate strangers about invisible wounds without showing the scars." Rex stood perfectly still beside me, 4 years of training in every line of his body. Brenda's eyes swept over him like he was contraband. "I don't see any blindness here," she replied, lips pursed in a way that made my pulse spike. Then she turned and walked off, tossing over her shoulder, "We'll see about that." Rex pressed against my leg as the door clicked shut. Deep pressure therapy, his silent way of telling me to breathe. By sunrise today, "We'll see" had turned into official paper taped to my door. That's Brenda's style. Quiet venom delivered with bureaucratic polish. Most of my neighbors aren't like her. Mrs. Olivia brings Rex homemade treats and calls him a gentleman. The Rodriguez kids think he's cooler than Captain America. Even Bob, the mailman, scratches Rex's ears when he drops off my VA letters. But Brenda doesn't need everyone to hate you. She just needs 3 votes on a 7-member HOA board. And she's got them. I peeled the notice off the door, the tape ripping loud in the still morning, and walked back inside. My coffee sat forgotten on the counter. My hand shook harder. Rex hopped up on the couch and put his full weight across my lap, chest pressed to mine, slowing my heartbeat like he'd been trained to do. I should have been furious. Instead, I was tired. Tired of having to explain why scars you can't see still bleed. Tired of people who confuse power with purpose. But under the exhaustion, something colder burned. Brenda thinks I'm just another resident she can bully into compliance. She doesn't know what happens when you try to take a soldier's lifeline. I rubbed Rex's ears. He looked up at me, calm, steady, waiting for the next move. "Game on, buddy," I murmured. And somewhere down the street, behind perfectly trimmed hedges, I swear a white BMW engine started. By midweek, the neighborhood had shifted, not in the way asphalt cracks after a desert summer. Slower than that, quieter, but you could feel it. Curtains moved when I walked Rex at dawn. Conversations hushed when I passed by the mailbox. It wasn't paranoia. It was surveillance with a smile. Brenda had started her campaign. The first sign was the certified letter, thick enough to double as a doorstop. Official language dripped off every page. Aggressive breed prohibition, pet size restriction, noise ordinance violation. It all pointed to one solution: remove Rex or face daily fines that could sink a mortgage. Rex lay at my feet as I read, his steady breathing the only calm thing in the room. My coffee went cold. My pulse didn't. It wasn't just the letter, it was the timing. The ink was barely dry on that notice before I caught Brenda's white BMW gliding past my window at odd hours. Always during Rex's yard time. Always with her phone held just high enough to film. I tried talking to her once more. Bad idea. Brenda, he's a service dog. PTSD trained. Federal law protects him. She didn't blink. Federal law doesn't run this neighborhood, Mr. Morrison. We do. Her voice was cool, but her eyes burned with something else. Not just dislike, but calculation. She wasn't angry that Rex barked once at a raccoon. She was planning something. That night, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by HOA documents, covenant clauses printed in fonts designed to bore people into submission. My IT background made me good at finding patterns, and Brenda's edits glared like desert sun on polished glass. Somewhere between 2008 and now, language protecting service animals had been accidentally removed. Accidents don't use track changes. Rex nudged me again, sensing the spike in my heart rate. I scratched behind his ears, thinking of Mrs. Olivia's words over Jasmine tea the week before. Some people fear what they don't understand. Some just enjoy control. By Friday, Brenda's shadow network had mobilized. Neighbors I'd only waved to were suddenly concerned about Rex's temperament. The Rodriguez family whispered that Brenda had asked them to install cameras facing my yard. Bob the mailman mentioned she'd been asking about my delivery schedule. Questions no one should need answers to. This wasn't about noise. This was about leverage. Saturday morning brought proof. Rex barked once, at a feral cat darting across our fence line. By sunset, Brenda had posted a grainy phone video on the neighborhood message board. No context, no audio, just a caption: dangerous animal in family community. Board meeting Thursday. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid of Brenda. I'd face worse in Baghdad, but because I could see where this road led if I didn't fight back. I opened my laptop, not to vent, but to build a case. Cloud backups for every security camera. Timestamps on every HOA email. Audio recorders ready for the next confrontation. Arizona's one-party consent law was about to become my best friend. The next morning, Mrs. Olivia knocked on my door, cardigan smelling of jasmine and quiet fury. She's telling people you fake your disability, she said flatly. And she's keeping lists. Names of who sides with you. Behind her, Miguel Rodriguez hovered awkwardly, 17, sharp-eyed, phone in hand. Mr. Morrison, I've been tracking her posts. She's using fake accounts. I can prove it's her. The boy grinned like he'd just hacked into the Pentagon. And for the first time that week, I smiled too. Brenda wasn't just building a case against me. She was building evidence for mine. That evening, Rex sat beside me in the backyard, watching a sky bleeding orange into purple. My pulse steadied under his weight as I thought about the people around me. A widow willing to defy fear. A teenager who treated digital forensics like a video game. A mailman who noticed more than he delivered. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I felt. Somewhere down the street, a car, door slammed, Brenda, probably finishing her evening patrol. Her silhouette passed under a streetlight. Phone raised, scanning for violations. I ran my hand through Rex's fur. They picked the wrong fight, buddy, I whispered. And in that quiet, desert-dry air, the game stopped feeling personal. It started feeling strategic. By Tuesday night, the neighborhood felt less like a subdivision and more like an observation post. Brenda's BMW prowled past at precise intervals. Phone always angled toward my yard like she was documenting enemy movement. I didn't need combat training to know what this was: surveillance. But surveillance meant patterns, and patterns could be mapped. I'd spent the last 3 evenings building a dossier. Every drive-by, every bogus complaint, every grainy clip she'd posted on the neighborhood board went into a cloud folder labeled evidence. Phase 1. Miguel Rodriguez had taken it further. He'd traced Brenda's anonymous online accounts back to her home IP address. The kid even organized the screenshots into folders by time and topic. When I asked how he learned to do it, he just shrugged and said, Call of Duty in YouTube. But what I found next made my chest tighten harder than any PTSD flashback. While double-checking HOA records, I noticed something odd. 3 houses on our street had gone into foreclosure over the last 2 years. That wasn't shocking in itself. Recessions hit hard. But each case looked eerily similar. Sudden violation notices. Daily fines. Then fire sale listings handled by Brenda's real estate company. I pulled county property records, scanning late into the night under Rex's watchful gaze. Each address told the same story. Harassment, financial pressure, forced sale, and Brenda cashing a commission check. This wasn't about Rex barking at a cat. This was a business model. The realization hit like a sniper round. If I backed down, I'd be another notch on her belt. If I fought, I'd expose something far uglier than a neighborly feud. But fighting meant risk, real risk. Lawsuits, retaliation, and the creeping thought I hated most. What if I'm wrong? What if this is just me seeing war ghosts where there aren't any? PTSD makes you second-guess even clear facts. Rex nudged my knee as if answering that thought himself. His steady weight was reality. My hands were trembling for a reason. The next morning, Mrs. Olivia arrived, clutching a folder thick with notes written in her precise script. She tried to recruit me, she said, voice tight with outrage. Asked me to keep record of when you leave the house. Said it's for community safety. I stared at her, the weight of it all pressing down. She's not just after me. She's after everyone who won't play along. Mrs. Olivia nodded gravely. Then maybe it's time we stop being quiet. That afternoon, I met Amanda Torres, veterans legal aid attorney, sharp as razor wire in a downtown office lined with dusty law books. I laid everything on her desk. Violation notices, altered covenant clauses, Miguel's screenshots, property records showing Brenda's pattern. Amanda flipped through it, brow furrowing deeper with every page. Garrett, this isn't just harassment. This is federal. Disability discrimination plus real estate fraud. That's DOJ territory. I expected her to be cautious. Instead, she smiled. This is beautiful. She's documenting her own crimes for us. Walking out of that office into the desert heat, I felt something I hadn't in months. Clarity. This wasn't just about protecting my service dog. It was about stopping a predator using bureaucracy as a weapon. But clarity didn't erase fear. That night, I sat in the dark living room, Rex stretched across my feet, my chest tightening with that old battlefield squeeze. What if I dragged the whole neighborhood into a war they weren't ready for? What if Brenda ruined their lives too? I remembered something my drill sergeant used to say. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's carrying fear on your back and moving anyway. By Thursday morning, the neighborhood had a pulse. A petition appeared on my doorstep. 57 signatures supporting service animal rights. Miguel texted me a map of Brenda's nightly surveillance route. And Mrs. Olivia left a casserole and a note. Good people stand together. Don't let her scare you. The battle lines were clear now. Brenda thought she was isolating me. In reality, she was building an army. I looked down at Rex, calm as ever, his eyes reflecting the sunrise through the living room window. She's not just coming after us, I whispered. She's coming after this whole community. His ears twitched, as if he already knew. And in that moment, I made the decision. No more defense. No more waiting. I wasn't going to fight back. I was going to tear the whole rotten scheme into daylight. The next HOA board meeting wouldn't be about one dog. It would be about everything Brenda didn't want the world to see. 10 days until the HOA board meeting, and Meadowbrook Estates felt less like a neighborhood and more like an occupied zone. Brenda's BMW crept past at all hours, headlights off, phone glowing faintly as she filmed. Security cameras I'd installed caught her stopping at the curb, just long enough to make Rex bristle. By then, I had everything routed to cloud storage, every drive-by, every threatening note, every bogus post Miguel traced to her IP address. But Brenda wasn't slowing down. She was unraveling. The first real crack came on a Tuesday morning when Officer Martinez from Animal Control showed up at my door, hat in hand, looking almost embarrassed. Got a complaint, he said, glancing at Rex in his vest. Claims your dog's unlicensed and dangerous. I handed over Rex's city tags, vaccination records, and Federal Service animal documentation. Martinez scanned them, snorted softly. This is solid. False reports like this, they're a misdemeanor now. He lowered his voice. We get these from HOAs all the time. But yours? She's in a league of her own. You might want to start thinking legal. Already am, I told him. And Rex leaned his head against my knee like he understood every word. By Thursday, Brenda's smear campaign went nuclear. Anonymous posts accused me of faking PTSD, calling Rex a pet in a costume. Miguel traced every account to her home network. One even used her favorite phrase, rules are rules. Mrs. Olivia brought over tea and whispered, she's asking people to watch her house. Even offered to pay some of them. Who's saying yes? I asked. Not as many as she hoped. Her thin smile carried quiet pride. Good people are louder than she thinks. The harassment sharpened into something uglier that weekend. A Craigslist contractor showed up at my gate, holding forged paperwork claiming he'd been hired to remove a dangerous animal. Fortunately, Mrs. Olivia spotted him first and called me home before Rex even left the yard. The man looked pale when I showed him Rex's federal ID and explained theft of a service animal is a felony. Lady told me it was abandoned. He stammered before handing over the fake order. Another piece of evidence. Another ally who couldn't believe how far this had gone. Meanwhile, Amanda Torres, the attorney who now had an entire office wall dedicated to Brenda's crimes, was drilling me like we were prepping for trial. Stay calm. No matter what she says at the meeting, you don't rise to it. Let her hang herself. Easier said than done, I muttered, thinking about every cold knock on my door, every sleepless night, every flashback she triggered just by existing. Amanda set her pen down. Garrett, this isn't just about you anymore. It's about everyone she's bullied. You in this clean, you don't just keep Rex. You changed this whole neighborhood. But the weight of it pressed in hard that night. Sitting in the dark living room, Rex across my feet, I let the exhaustion catch me off guard. The tightness in my chest, the memories of Baghdad streets lit orange by fire, the sound of metal on concrete that still woke me at 3 a.m. I rubbed Rex's ears, whispering, they don't see you. They don't see what you do for me. He pressed harder into my legs, deep pressure therapy, steady heartbeat against mine, and for a minute I could breathe again. The neighborhood wasn't silent anymore. Support signs started appearing in yards. We stand with Rex. A petition now carried over 70 signatures. Even Chuck, one of Brenda's own board allies, pulled me aside at the Circle K. Look, he said, eyes scanning the parking lot. I thought this was just rule enforcement. But she's gone too far. If it comes to a vote, I won't back her. It was a crack in her wall, but cracks can make desperate people dangerous. That night, as Rex and I sat under a desert sky streaked purple and gold, Brenda's car slowed in front of my house again. This time she didn't just film. She rolled down her window, stared straight at me, and smiled. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't even human. It was the look of someone who thinks they can't lose. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something sharper than fear. Resolve. In 6 days, we'd face her in front of the entire neighborhood. And I wouldn't be walking in alone. The community clubhouse smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and nervous sweat. Folding chairs packed wall to wall, neighbors filling every inch, phones raised like glowing witnesses. I walked in with Rex at my side, his service vest sharp against his black and tan coat, calm as a soldier on parade. My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. At the front table, Brenda shuffled papers with a composure so brittle it could snap at a whisper. White BMW keys sat beside her like a badge of office. Her allies, Chuck, Linda, Dave, looked uneasy under the fluorescent lights. Tonight, Brenda began, voice pitched high with authority she didn't quite have anymore. We address an ongoing threat to community safety. Federal disability laws do not override private covenants, and we will not be intimidated by legal threats. Amanda Torres, seated behind me with a thick folder, murmured, "That's already strike one. Keep breathing." When my turn came, I stood with Rex pressing against my boots, deep pressure therapy grounding me as I faced the room. "This isn't about noise," I said, my voice steady. "It isn't about breed restrictions. This is about harassment, about power being used to hurt people instead of help them. I held up Rex's documentation, federal, state, city, every seal, every certification. Then I set it down and opened the real file. 3 families forced out of this neighborhood. I continued, flipping through property records projected on the clubhouse wall. All after sudden violation campaigns. All homes sold below market by Brenda Whitmore's real estate company. A ripple went through the crowd. Brenda's jaw tightened. These aren't coincidences. This is a pattern. And when she came after me, and my service dog, she picked the wrong target. Miguel Rodriguez, standing in the back with his phone, hit a button. Screens lit up with screenshots of Brenda's fake accounts. Timestamps tied to her home Wi-Fi. Post calling me a fraud. Post threatening Rex. Mrs. Olivia spoke next, voice firm as desert stone. This man's dog is a gentleman. Brenda is problem, not dog. Applause followed, hesitant at first, then growing until the room hummed with it. I turned to the board. You're being dragged into something illegal. The Americans with Disabilities Act doesn't just suggest compliance. It requires it. And federal law makes each of you personally liable if you vote to uphold this harassment. Amanda rose. Her voice cut through the air like glass snapping. We filed a federal civil rights complaint. Here are the covenants Brenda altered without a member vote. She held up 2 versions side by side. The original from 2008 protecting service animals and the updated 2019 version Brenda had quietly edited. Brenda tried to interrupt, but Amanda didn't break stride. Selective enforcement, retaliation, fraud, and thanks to Arizona's one-party consent law, she clicked a remote. We have audio. Brenda's own voice filled the room. Federal law doesn't run this neighborhood. We do. I'll make sure he regrets moving here. Gasps, whispers, a few muttered curses. That was when Brenda snapped. This man's not disabled, she shouted, pointing at me, her voice cracking under the weight of months of rage. He faked it to keep his oversized mutt. You're all fools if you believe him. The words hung there, ugly and raw. Rex pressed harder against my legs. Perfect, calm, unshaken. Chuck, the ex-cop board member, finally spoke, voice low but carrying. Enough, Brenda. I've served with men like him. I know what PTSD looks like. And I know what abuse of power looks like, too. The room erupted, neighbors shouting, some standing, phones recording every second. Brenda tried to bang her little gavel, but the sound was swallowed by the noise. The vote was swift and devastating. 6-0. All charges against me and Rex dropped. Brenda removed as HOA president effective immediately. But the real moment wasn't the vote. It was the silence after, when Officer Martinez stepped forward to serve Brenda with a restraining order, and Amanda slid a thick envelope of evidence across the table. Federal law always wins, Amanda said, voice calm, almost kind. You should have known that. Brenda's hands shook as she gathered her papers. This isn't over, she hissed, but her voice was small now, brittle as glass about to break. Rex didn't move. He didn't need to. The clubhouse emptied slowly that night, but the air outside felt electric, humming with something more than desert heat. Neighbors who had only nodded politely before and now stopped to shake my hand, to scratch Rex's ears, to murmur, "We're with you." Brenda was gone, storming out to her white BMW with cameras catching every furious step. But the sound of her tires squealing down the street didn't feel like victory. It felt like aftermath. The next weeks unfolded like the quiet after an explosion, smoke clearing, damage showing. The board rescinded every fine, every notice, every stain Brenda had stamped on my name. Amanda Torres walked me through settlement documents that read like justice carved in stone. Legal fees reimbursed, service animal protections reinstated, new transparency policies drafted. But it wasn't just policy. Something in Meadowbrook Estates had shifted. People who'd kept their curtains drawn now stood together on sidewalks. Mrs. Olivia started an informal watch group, not to spy, but to look out for each other. Miguel printed "We Stand with Rex" flyers and passed them door to door until every street corner looked like a neighborhood waking up. Brenda didn't vanish quietly. News crews followed her real estate license suspension. State investigators dug into the altered covenants and missing HOA funds. I didn't need to lift a finger. She'd written her own indictment, and the world was reading it line by line. One evening, Officer Martinez stopped by, hands in his pockets, gaze soft. "She won't be bothering you anymore," he said simply. "Federal case is moving forward. And for what it's worth, you handled this cleaner than most would." I looked down at Rex, who rested his head against my knee, as steady as ever. "He handled most of it," I said. "I just followed his lead." Life settled, but not in the way I expected. Instead of retreating into myself, I found I couldn't walk Rex without someone stopping to talk, to thank us, to tell me their own story about disability, about fear, about bullies they'd stayed quiet around. The board named the new policy Rex's rule, an HOA resolution affirming federal service animal protections, printed on the same kind of aggressive red paper Brenda once used for her violation letters. This time the color meant protection, not threat. 6 months later, the community park smelled of cut grass and barbecue smoke at the first Service Animal Appreciation Day. Kids ran with dogs, veterans shared stories over paper cups of lemonade, and someone tied a bandana around Rex's neck that read, "Neighborhood Hero." Amanda spoke briefly, but her words weren't about law. They were about people. This isn't just a win for one man or one dog. This is what happens when a community refuses to look away. Mrs. Olivia pressed a homemade treat into my hand, tears shining in her eyes. "Good people make good neighborhoods," she whispered. "You reminded us." Later that night, when the crowds were gone and the desert sky burned orange over quiet streets, I sat on the back porch with Rex's weight pressed against my legs. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next ambush. The air smelled of creosote and dust, not danger. My chest stayed still, steady. This was never just about us, was it? I murmured, scratching behind Rex's ears. He leaned into me, eyes half closed, like he'd known all along. Brenda's house sold to a young military family, a couple with a toddler and a German shepherd their own. On move-in day, I walked over with Rex to say hello. Their little boy toddled forward, unsteady but fearless, and Rex lowered his head so the child could pat his ears. "Good dog," the boy said solemnly, as if he understood everything that had happened. I looked at the parents, tired, hopeful, and felt something warm settle in my chest. This neighborhood wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was what I'd come here looking for, a place to heal. Sometimes justice doesn't come from shouting louder than your enemy. Sometimes it comes from standing your ground so quietly, so firmly, that the ground itself shifts beneath them. As the sun slipped under the horizon and Rex rested his head against my knee, I thought of Brenda's last words. "This isn't over." She was right. It wasn't over. It was just beginning for every veteran, every neighbor, every quiet fighter who deserved to live without fear. And somewhere in the still evening air, it felt like the whole block was breathing easier. 8.